So we have learned a lot about Barack Obama, the man of sin, and the son of perdition. And on this podcast, which will be the final podcast of the series, the conclusion, I will give you a lot of information about Obama that you will find very interesting, pertinent, and thought-provoking, shocking, and bewildering indeed. Please join me. The New Radio Church of God and the Plain and Simple Truth Ministries present the Messenger of the Lord with Apostle Yeshua, preaching the gospel of the good news of the kingdom of God and informing you about world events in the light of Bible prophecy and preparing the way for the return of Jesus Christ. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Apostle Yeshua. Is Barack Obama delusional or worse? Is Barack Obama delusional? Many think that he is that or worse after the Paris terrorist attacks. November 17, 2015. Is Barack Obama delusional? That's how Bill O'Reilly led his Fox News show a few years back, addressing Obama's press conference in Turkey, in which the president defended his disastrously ineffective policies for dealing with the rapidly metastatizing terror army ISIS, which after last week's hellish Paris attacks vows Washington D.C. is next. After the commercial break, O'Reilly started in asking again, is President Barack Obama delusional about ISIS? Joining us now from Washington, Charles Krauthammer. Is he? Responded Krauthammer, a Pulitzer-winning columnist and Jesuit Masonic former psychiatrist. And I quote, judging from the press conference, there are several explanations for that appalling performance. The kindest is that he's delusional. Krauthammer explained, he said on Friday that ISIS was not gaining in strength, though even his own Dianne Feinstein said essentially it's a delusion. Of course it's gaining in strength, but the reason that delusion is the kindest explanation is, I think, the more likely explanation is he knows that opposition is weakening, he knows that ISIS is strong and that it's a threat, but in the end, he doesn't think it matters. He's never thought the war on terror was important or existential. O'Reilly, but how can you say that he doesn't understand that millions of people are either dying, being dislocated, being tortured, being wounded, and you still, Charles Krauthammer, say he doesn't care? It doesn't mean anything to him. Krauthammer, there's a difference between millions of people suffering and an existential threat to the West, which is what it is, and which is what he denies. A little later in Fox primetime lineup, former CIA operative Mike Baker, a guest on Hannity, described Obama's actions and attitude with regard to radical Islam as surreal. Then Hannity, in an exchange with psychology expert Dr. Gina Ludon about the Paris terror attacks, observed, and I quote, some good people have a hard time grasping that these people could go into a crowded theater and start shooting innocent men and women and children. That's just evil in our time. This president's not even recognizing, won't recognize, it's pathological that he won't recognize radical Islam. It's absolutely pathological, responded Ludon, and it's not just pathological, it's stupid and it's dangerous. Delusional, surreal, doesn't care, pathological, stupid, dangerous. That's America's 44th president they're talking about. For the past 7 years, sane Americans have been trying to explain Obama, evoking various hypotheses, including the very possibility that he's a genuine sociopath, that is someone without conscience. Fox pundit, longtime ABC News personality, and Pulitzer-winning columnist George Will described Barack Obama's intellectual sociopathy, his often breezy and sometimes loutish indifference to truth. In my own personal view, he is not only delusional, but has not had the best interest of the USA at heart. Much of what he has done seems to be intentional to hurt U.S. influence in the world, including debt increases. His pro-LGBT positions are also leading to the end of the USA. Ex-President Barack Obama's administration has been leading U.S. to World War III. Believe it or not, since Barack Obama has become USA President, the USA has taken numerous steps to push the Germans and other Europeans to be able to start World War III, and this has continued in slightly different ways since he left office. Here's a list of 10 steps that the Obama administration has taken that is leading to the rise of the beast of the sea, the final king of the north of Bible prophecy. Number 1. Encourage the final approval of the Lisbon Treaty. On October 15, 2009, it was reported that Czech President Václav Klaus was the lone EU leader still opposed to the Lisbon Treaty. Waterfield v. Czech President Václav Klaus to continue long resistance to Lisbon Treaty. Telegraph, October 15, 2009. Number 2. The Obama administration worked to get the Lisbon Treaty approved as President Obama wants a strong and united Europe. Source, Baldwin T. Wright T. Cody's Obama administration worried about Cameron effect in Europe. The Times, October 21, 2009. Number 3. On October 23, 2009, the USA sent Vice President Joseph Biden to the Czech Republic in order to provide security assurances as well as to apply pressure to the Czech government to sign the agreement for a European empire to form. U.S. foreign policy aware of threats. Hubble after meeting Biden. CTK, October 23, 2009. This could have had some limited influence on some of the Czech leadership. Number 4. Once its then President Klaus signed it, he announced with disappointment that he had just signed away the sovereignty of the Czech Republic. The Czech Republic was the only holdout for the agreement, and if the Czech Republic had not then signed it, the agreement would have expired. Instead, the USA applied pressure to form a more complete European government that will ultimately change and become the beast power of Revelation 13, 1 through 10, and will take over the USA as prophesied in Daniel 11:39. So, I ask you, what do you expect from a Jesuit government like America? Number 5. On November 3, 2009, Agence France Presse, AFP, reported that USA President Barack Obama publicly expressed his support for the Czech president's signing of the Lisbon Treaty and for now having a strengthened EU. Obama welcomes strengthened EU. AFP, November 3, 2009. Number 6. The European nations became part of the new Roman Empire, called for the European Union on December 1, 2009, with Herman von Rompuy as its first permanent president. EU Constitution comes into force. Voice of America, December 1, 2009. Number 7. Encourage German funding of Greece. When the new agreement was at risk of falling apart because of problems with Greece, the New York Times reported that on May 10, 2010, President Obama called German Chancellor Merkel and told her that Europe needed an overwhelming financial rescue for the sake of its unity, and she apparently heeded that suggestion. Erlanger S. Benhol K. Sanger D. Debt aid package for Europe took notch from Washington. The New York Times, May 10, 2010. This kept the Union of Europeans dominated by Germany together. Number 8. On November 10, 2010, EU President Herman Van Rompuy declared that in Europe the time of the homogeneous nation state is over. Johnson D. The end of Britain as a nation state? Not on your life, Mr. Van Rompuy. Daily Mail, November 11, 2010. Full political union is expected in the next decade by many leaders. Willis A. Germany predicts EU political union in 10 years. EU observer December 13, 2010, and someone much sooner. Zuzka T. Parker B. Merkel risk EU clash over political union push. Bloomberg, November 14, 2011. It has been reported that the EU is an empire. Baudet T. The EU is an empire and empires mean war. NRC Handelsblad, Press Europe, July 9, 2012. Number 9. This is an empire that Barack Obama has been supporting. Number 10. In December 2010, it was announced USA made an extra commitment of money to support the EU, and it was also reported that the United States has committed 250 billion euros to the EFSF, European Financial Stability Facility, to support the euro and economic structure of the European Union. US ready to back bigger EU Stability Fund. Official, Reuters, December 1, 2010. US believes it's time Germany stepped up and started acting like a regional and even a global leader, and Barack Obama publicly stated, "The world today does not fear a strong Germany." DJW Media Roundup, Barack gives Angie a push. The local June 8, 2011. And number 11. To rely on Europe's GPS for defense. Back in 2009, I warned that the USA was having problems with its GPS system and may decide it needed to rely on Europe's upcoming Galileo system for its own military defense. The Europeans are planning on having their very own global positioning system, GPS, called Galileo, available for military applications. This will allow the Europeans to track the world and attack others without relying on the USA's GPS. This will be the first time in the 21st century that Europeans will be able to have that type of independent military capability. Furthermore, according to a 2009 very detailed report from the US government, the US Air Force may have to start relying on the European Galileo system at least to a degree beginning in 2013, as the US GPS capabilities are expected to deteriorate by then. Other problems are also appearing in the newer US satellites. Because the Europeans will be able to control Galileo, they will also likely be capable of derailing certain sophisticated US military applications. This will give the Europeans a unique defensive as well as offensive capability that no others on the planet will have. Theo B. 2012 and the Rise of the Secret Sect, Nazarene Books, 2009, page 85. Number 1. Because of concerns about China, Reuters reported on February 4, 2010, the U.S. Defense Department is linking its global positioning system with Europe's Galileo, another space-based global navigation satellite system. GPS will feature a new military signal called M-code to boost anti-jamming, facilitate secure access, and increase the local signal strength. Wolf J. U.S. Weary of China, most satellite substitutes. Reuters, February 4, 2010. Number 2. This linking will essentially guarantee that the USA will have a portion of their military responsibility controlled by the Europeans. Galileo initially had critics, as there were early objections from the Americans who thought a rival system to GPS might be used to attack its armed forces. Amos J. EU awards Galileo satellite navigation contracts. BBC, January 7, 2010. Number 3. The brain of the Galileo satellite system was shipped to Rome on April 26, 2010. First EU navigation satellite payload shipped. Red Orbit, 26 April 2010, and July 31st, 2010, it was announced that the USA would indeed do this. This is all the more astounding because the USA was initially opposed to Europe developing Galileo because it felt this could be used against the USA. Now, the USA is partially dependent upon it, and in the event of war with Europe, the USA will not be able to effectively communicate or counter-strike because of this. Number 4. Pivoting away from defending Europe. The pivot that the USA and its ally Canada have been doing towards defending Asia, as it has been called since at least 2012, has resulted in a pivot away from Europe. The Germans and others in Europe are realizing that the USA is not intending to defend them as before. Hence, the USA is pushing them to arm themselves. Number 5, pushing the Europeans to develop their military. In 2012, U.S. Defense Secretary Panetta made public calls for the Europeans to increase their military strength and spending. Carmichael L. Europe needs to invest in defense too. U.S. Defense News, February 4th, 2012. In the spring of 2014, the Obama administration again called for Europe, meaning to a great degree Germany, to increase their military spending. Increasing military spending will turn out to be the destructive thing to the USA, according to Daniel 11:39. Donald Trump has done this pushing as well, and the Europeans are going that way. This is very dangerous. Number 6, removal of tanks from Germany. In 2013, the USA removed the last of its tanks from Germany. By having no tanks on the ground, this means that the USA will not have the ground force power to fight against Germany in the event of a war against the USA, should some elements of the US Army attempt to do that. 7. Agreement to share espionage and techniques. Because of the Snowden leaks in 2013, U.S. President Barack Obama promised to turn over to Jesuit Germany all of its espionage techniques, etc., as well as to reduce espionage against Germany. This will give the Germans a major advantage over the USA. If you know how your enemy spies and what he spies on, you can take steps to protect secrets. Number 8. Cessation of Chancellor Merkel's cellular telephone conversations. Barack Obama agreed to no longer allow listening in on the cell phone of German Chancellor Angela Merkel after she complained Merkel angered by USA allegedly listening in on her cell phone and EU summit to discuss USA spying. And by the way, speaking of Merkel, did you know that she is actually the daughter of Hitler? They did manage to freeze, his sperm, and they did, that embryo thing that they do, with a sperm and an ovum. And that's how Angela Merkel was created. So she's the official daughter of Hitler. And presumably will not do this for her replacement. This will reduce the ability of the USA to understand what is going on when Germany is coordinating an attack in the future. While this may not seem to be important, it could prove disastrous. Number 9, allowing the loss of Crimea. While Barack Obama did make stronger statements than some European leaders related to Crimea, for example, Russia controls Crimea, Obama talks to Putin, Putin defiant, Obama dissed by many. The reality is that they did not stop Russia. Although Barack Obama and Germany's Angela Merkel called the annexation unacceptable, Merkel Obama called Crimea grab unacceptable. Agence France Presse, March 18, 2014. It is clear to the Germans that the USA has accepted it. Germany still wants Crimea back. Europe and the Germans are concluding that they will need their own military deterrence to Russia to stop further incursions into territories that they want to be part of the European Union. The Europeans are moving ahead with military technology, and this will give them further motivation. And this is why, they are helping the Ukraine now, because they never wanted, Russia to invade Ukraine according to their thinking, and they wanted the Ukraine to be part of the European Union. Number 10, giving Europeans control over more of the USA military. As far as the control of the military, the first non-American French general and Freemason Stéphane Abriel became the official commander of the Allied Command Transformation of NATO in Europe in September 2009. French general takes over key NATO command in US RTT News, September 10, 2009. 11. He was replaced by another French general, Jean-Paul Paloméros. So this is another part of the military no longer under USA control. In the summer of 2014, the Obama administration placed a German general over the entire U.S. Army in Europe. Number 12, in August 2014, the Obama administration placed a German general, Brigadier General Markus Lowenthal, formerly commander of the 12th Armored Brigade in Hamburg and Chief of Staff for the International Security Assistance Force, Regional Command North in Afghanistan. the Chief of Staff for the U.S. Army in Europe. This means that the Europeans will have much more control over the military over the USA than most have imagined. And all of these steps that are publicly known, these steps will help Europe when it finally decides to start World War III. There may also be other steps that have not been publicly revealed. This will not end well for the USA. So let's talk about the King of the South steps. Back in 2009, I wrote the following. The Bible predicts that at the appointed time, a king of the north and a king of the south will rise. Various statements that Barack Obama has made suggest that he will implement policies that will likely help lead to the multinational formations that will ultimately have these kings. Islamic prophecy. Barack Obama to aid the rise of the king of the south? Is a question. According to a commentary by Amir Taheri in Forbes, there is an amazing old Shiite prophecy that some in Iran believe seems to fit Barack Hussein Obama personally. Now, without seeing the actual Shiite prophecy that Forbes reported about, which would have been in either Red Persian or Arabic, it is not certain that Barack Obama will meet all of the criteria of that prophecy, or if reports on it are entirely accurate. However, if Barack Hussein Obama is a president of the United States, because of what the Bible code has shown me, his administration will help most likely inadvertently lead to the rise of the future king of the south, who is mentioned in end-time Bible prophecy. As mentioned earlier, even some Shiite Muslims do believe that his presidency may lead to the rise of their Mahdi, who seems to be the same person that the Bible calls the king of the south. When world events started to quickly align with many documented, biblically understood predictions in that book, not too much at first seemed to be taking place nor happening related to the formation of the king of the south. But that changed. From promoting the Muslim Brotherhood to promoting regional cooperation, Barack Obama, as a faithful Jesuit, has encouraged the formation of an Islamic confederation or caliphate. Notice how U.S. ex-President Barack Obama and his advisors were promoting this in September 2014. September 5th, 2014. Our goal is to act with urgency, but also make sure that we're doing it right, that we have the right targets, that there's support on the ground, that we have a strong political coalition, Obama said at a news conference. One major piece of the strategy for weakening the threat from Islamic State, Obama and aides said, will be the support and participation of the neighbors of Syria and Iraq. It is absolutely critical that we have Arab states, and specifically Sunni majority states, that are rejecting the kind of extremist nihilism that we're seeing out of ISIS, that say that is not what Islam is about, and are prepared to join us actively in the fight, Obama said, using one of the acronyms for Islamic State. September 13, 2014. Egypt has a key role to play in countering Islamic State militants in Iraq and Syria, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said on a visit to Cairo. He met Arab League Chief Nabil al-Arabi and Egypt's President Sisi as part of his campaign to form a broad coalition to tackle ISIS militants. September 24, 2014. President Barack Obama on Wednesday called on the world to join him in an effort to degrade and ultimately destroy Islamic State militants. Addressing the UN General Assembly in New York, he highlighted efforts to build an international coalition to combat the group that has taken over large areas in Syria and Iraq. U.S. President Barack Obama addresses the 69th United Nations General Assembly at UN headquarters in New York, September 24, 2014. And I quote, "This group has terrorized all who they come across in Iraq and Syria," he said. "Mothers, sisters, and daughters have been subjected to rape as a weapon of war. Innocent children have been gunned down. Bodies have been dumped in mass graves. Religious minorities have been starved to death in the most horrific crimes imaginable. Innocent human beings have been beheaded, with videos of the atrocity distributed to shock the conscience of the world." And we all have seen those videos on YouTube, okay? It's very real. In this effort, we do not act alone, nor do we intend to send U.S. troops to occupy foreign lands, he added, noting that more than 40 nations have offered to join U.S.-led efforts to conduct airstrikes against militant strongholds in Syria and Iraq. We will train and equip forces fighting against these terrorists on the ground, he said. We will work to cut off their financing and to stop the flow of fighters into and out of the region. September 12, 2014. Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, AP. Key Arab allies promised Thursday to do their share, quote-unquote, to fight Islamic State militants. The 10 Middle East allies announced their backing for a strategy to destroy, quote-unquote, the evil group, whether it is including in both Iraq and Syria, following a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in the Red Sea coastal city of Jeddah. Kerry's visit on the anniversary of the September 11 attacks was aimed at pinning down how much support regional allies are willing to give to the U.S. plan to beat back the Islamic State group, which they themselves created through the Jesuits, by the way. Thursday's meeting in Jeddah ended with Saudi Arabia, other Gulf states, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, and Lebanon pledging to stand against terrorism. They promised steps including stopping fighters and funding repudiating the Islamic State group's wicked ideology, providing humanitarian aid as appropriate, joining in the many aspects of a coordinated military campaign. People, friends, I need you to understand one thing. Whatever U.S. diplomats, the president or whoever is talking, okay, don't believe a word they say. Because whatever they tell you is a lie, is the opposite of what they want to do. Just remember that. It's the opposite. Okay? They don't want to exterminate Islam. They want to promote it. And that's what they have been doing for years. Don't kid yourself. It's about time to wake up and get the plain and simple truth that I give you in this podcast. They also agreed to boost support for the new Iraqi government as it tries to unite its citizens in the fight against the militants. Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Saud Al Faisal said that coalition members agreed to share responsibilities for fighting the Islamic State group, as well as to be serious and continuous in our action to eliminate and wipe out all these terrorist organizations. September 20, 2014. President Obama on Saturday said the United States will lead the fight against Islamic militants in the Middle East, but the struggle is one for all the world. Going forward, we won't hesitate to take action against these terrorists in Iraq or in Syria. But this is not America's fight alone. Obama said in his weekly radio address, "This isn't America versus ISIS. This is the people of that region versus ISIS. It's the world versus ISIS." Barack Obama pushed for the Sunni Muslim nations in the Middle East and in North Africa to be more directly involved in the fight against the Islamic State. The U.S. Army Chief of Staff says that the policies of the Obama administration led to the rise of the Islamic State terrorists. There you have it. You know, you're hearing it from the horse's mouth. July 22, 2015. Army Chief blames Obama-Hillary policy for ISIS. Says rise could have been prevented by U.S. The top officer of the U.S. Army, who's leaving his post in the coming weeks, said during his exit interview the Middle East tensions and tragedies due to ISIS could very well have been stopped if the United States had only been more engaged. It's frustrating to watch it, Odierno said, of the rise of ISIS in Iraq and Syria, Fox News reported. And I quote, "I go back to the work we did in 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010, and we got it to a place that was really good. Violence was low, the economy was growing, politics looked like it was heading in the right direction." He then said that the fall of certain spots in Iraq was hardly inevitable, and that America could have done a lot to stop that from happening. If we had stayed a little more engaged, I think maybe it might have been prevented, Odierno said to Fox News. "I've always believed the United States played the role of an honest broker between all the groups, and when we pulled ourselves out, we lost that role." Odierno had actually recommended the stay of up to 35,000 U.S. troops in 2011, at a time when President Obama was ordering them home. "I think it would have been good for us to stay," he said. He also said, speaking of what he called the unnecessary and dangerous cuts in the military, 2 years ago, we didn't think we had a problem in Europe. Now Russia is increasingly violently reasserting themselves. We didn't think we'd have a problem again in Iraq, and ISIS has emerged. So with Russia becoming more of a threat, with ISIS becoming more of a threat, in my mind we are on a dangerous balancing act right now with little capability. When we go to 450,000 troops, we are going to have to start doing something. Before the general made his comments, I had a similar view when I heard Barack Obama saying this, indicating that those who criticize his policies with Iraq are the same ones criticizing his policies towards Iran. While I am not advocating military roles for the USA, I will state that since the USA often uses military force, of course, the Jesuits are a military regime. The way of the US politicians, both parties, manage Iraq has certainly not led to peace. Because of the rise of the Islamic State, this is encouraging that the Arab nations, US politicians and others to consider forming a lasting confederation consistent with those that the Bible warns of in Ezekiel 30 verses 2 to 9 and Daniel 11 40 to 43. The one led by the final king of the south. When such a confederation is brought together, many will claim it will lead to peace in the Middle East and North Africa. And while a temporal peace will come to that region, according to Daniel 9:27, it will not be a lasting peace. Also, the confederation of Middle Eastern and Northern African nations that will form will not last nor turn out well for its participants according to the Bible. Notice the following: Son of man, prophesy and say, thus saith the Lord God, well, alas for the day is near. The day of the Lord is near. It will be a day of clouds, a time of doom for the nations. Sword shall come upon Egypt, and anguish shall be in Cush, when the slain fall in Egypt, and her wealth is carried away, and her foundations are torn down. Cush and Put and Lud and all Arabia and Libya and the people of the land that is in league, like NATO, shall fall with them by the sword. Thus saith the Lord, those who support Egypt shall fall, and her proud might shall come down from Migdol to Syene. They shall fall within her by the sword, declares the Lord God. And they shall be desolate in the midst of desolated countries, and their cities shall be in the midst of cities that are laid waste. Then they will know that I am the Lord, when I have set fire to Egypt, and all her helpers are broken. On that day messengers shall go out from me in ships to terrify the unsuspecting people of Cush, and anguish shall come upon them on the day of Egypt's doom, for behold it comes. Ezekiel 30 verses 2 to 9. However, since the Islamic world does not interpret those passages like we in the Church of God do, many Muslims are determined to form such a group. Many Muslims would like the group to be an Islamic caliphate, just with a less extreme interpretation of Islam than ISIS has. But again, the Bible shows that this will end in disaster. It should be understood that prior to the destruction of the final king of the south of biblical prophecy, the Bible shows that the USA itself will be eliminated, according to Daniel 11:39. Steps leading towards that continue to happen. I believe that many will point to groups such as the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Boko Haram, etc., as extremists, and claim that a moderate Arabic Turkish Islamic Confederation is the best way to control extremism. The West, including probably the UK and USA, will go along with that, as Barack Obama has encouraged this. Yet once there is a certain confederation, it may not be too long before destruction will come to many of the participants. I still maintain that more terrorism and violence will affect the USA and UK and will come from some associated with one or more forms of Islam. The Bible shows that the areas that are currently Sunni majority states in the Middle East and North Africa will compose a final king of the South, and that is something that Barack Obama and his administration is advocating, and that includes the current administration of Biden, by the way. I believe that the Bible shows that the king of the North, according to Daniel 11:39, and in conjunction with the terrorists, the king of the South, according to Psalms 83 verses 3 to 8, will cause the end of the USA. Notice also the following: the sword shall destroy outside, there shall be terror within. Deuteronomy 32 verse 25. Cry and wail, son of man, for it will be against my people, against all the princes of Israel. Terrors, including the sword, will be against my people. Therefore strike your thigh. Ezekiel 21:12. Deuteronomy 32:25 talks about a time of destruction that comes from an outside invasion and internal as well. And I have told you many times that China, Russia, and North Korea are going to invade the U.S. as well. Just like you have seen that movie, Red Dawn. It's going to happen. It's no longer going to be a Hollywood film. It's going to be reality. That is also consistent with what Ezekiel warned. Because of much terrorism which involves people in the lands that are biblically prophesied to be associated with the king of the south, these prophecies are consistent with terroristic actions from those regions in the future. Barack Obama and his administration took many steps that are helping to bring this about, as they did not understand properly explained biblical prophecy. Will we see an ecumenical Barack Obama in power again? Barack Obama supports an ecumenical agenda. As mentioned before, he admits to carrying a Hindu monkey god in his pocket. He also has made ecumenical public statements. For example, Barack Obama makes an ecumenical appeal. He also visited the Pope, as he and Pope Francis share certain economic and ecumenical objectives. Such ecumenical plans are dangerous for everyone, including Protestants and Catholics. While Barack Obama seems ecumenical, his popularity has dropped in the USA. July 2, 2014. A third of voters think Barack Obama is the worst president since World War II. According to a Quinnipiac University poll released Wednesday, George W. Bush came in second with 28%, naming him as the worst recent president, followed by Richard Nixon with 13%. The USA media tends to support Barack Obama, yet many there had doubts and concerns that they seldom broadcast or publish. Iran and the United Nations. Barack Obama got a deal with Iran which does not seem to place long-term limitations on its nuclear ambitions. July 14, 2015. White House. Months of international negotiations and years of sanctions targeting Iran's nuclear program led up to this one moment. In the early hours of July 14, U.S. President Barack Obama made his way down a long red carpeted hallway in the White House to announce a historic agreement. Just like when he went down that red carpet, to announce that they had killed, Osama bin Laden. The United States, together with our international partners, has achieved something that decades of animosity has not: a comprehensive long-term deal with Iran that will prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon, Obama said. Today, because America negotiated from position of strength and principle, we have stopped the spread of nuclear weapons in this region, Obama said. Agreement details key points. Iran will reduce stockpile of low-enriched uranium by 98% to 300 kilograms for 15 years. Iran will reduce by 2/3 the number of centrifuges operating to enrich uranium at its main processing center. Iran is prevented from designing warheads or conducting experiments on nuclear weapons-related technology. Arms embargo on Iran will be eased as long as IAEA judges Iran's nuclear program to be peaceful. International sanctions on Iran will be lifted, enabling it to export oil. If an international panel finds Iran is not honoring the accord, it can vote to restore sanctions. President Obama laid out the key points of the deal, noting that, and I quote, "every pathway to a nuclear weapon is cut off." Under the current agreement, he said Iran would no longer produce highly enriched uranium and weapons-grade plutonium that are necessary to make a nuclear bomb. Iran will remove 2/3 of its installed centrifuges and will not use its advanced centrifuges to produce enriched uranium for the next decade. Iran will also get rid of 98% of its stockpile enriched uranium and modify its core reactor. If Iran violates the deal, all the sanctions will snap back, Obama said. History shows that America must lead not just with our might, but with our principles. It shows we are stronger not when we are alone, but when we bring the world together, Obama said. Today's announcement marks one more chapter in this pursuit of a safer and more helpful, more hopeful world, quote unquote. This deal, according to certain experts, will encourage the spread of nuclear weapons in the Middle East, not stop it as Barack Obama just claimed. Notice that Saudi Arabia now indicates its will to take nuclear and/or actions. July 14, 2015. Saudi Arabia, Iran's chief adversary in the region, has been one of the strongest critics of a deal that offers a gradual lifting of international sanctions in return for curbs on Tehran's nuclear program. One Saudi diplomat described the agreement as extremely dangerous and said it would give a green light to his own government to start a nuclear energy program. July 14, 2015. The news anchor and state-run Saudi Channel 1, Mohammed Al-Moya, told Reuters on Tuesday that the deal should cause Sunni nations to seek partnerships with countries other than America. Iran made chaos in the Arab world and will extend further after the agreement, he said. And the Gulf Cooperation Council countries should reduce their confidence in America and turn their focus to Russia and China. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the deal. July 14, 2015. The news that major world powers and Iran reached a historic deal aimed at ensuring that Iran does not attain the nuclear bomb was met with condemnation by Israel, but hailed by the United Nations and Russia. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called Tuesday's nuclear deal with Iran a bad mistake of historic proportions and vowed to keep up efforts to block the Islamic Republic from obtaining an atomic bomb. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon congratulated negotiators in Vienna on finalizing an agreement in a statement Tuesday. And I quote, "I warmly welcome the historic agreement in Vienna today and congratulate the P5+1 and Iran for reaching this agreement. This is testament to the value of dialogue," Ban said in the statement. This guy should really be banned. I hope and indeed believe that this agreement will lead to greater mutual understanding and cooperation on the many serious security challenges in the Middle East. As such, it could serve as a vital contribution to peace and stability both in the region and beyond, the statement said. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin said, with the nuclear agreement, the world can breathe a sigh of relief and that the negotiating countries made hard choices for stability and cooperation. Really? Really? I mean, this is what the devil says, because Vladimir Putin is a devil. He's an antichrist. Get that in your head. Just think about it. He's got the most satanic and offensive nuclear weapons like the Sarmat, nicknamed Satan II. How about that? The European Union hailed it as a new chapter of hope for the world. Regional governments, the Iraq, Pakistan, and Afghanistan governments released statements welcoming the nuclear agreement, widely criticizing Israel. However, reaction was critical across the political spectrum in Israel, where concern is high. The country's archenemy has duped the world and will acquire nuclear weapons to use against Israel. Iran already backs militant groups that attack Israel, and all of its leaders frequently have referred to Israel's destruction in the past. Netanyahu has been at the forefront of global opposition to the deal and has openly clashed with the Obama administration and other Western powers that have been pushing for an easing of sanctions in return for greater restrictions on its nuclear program. Netanyahu showed no signs of tempering his criticism Tuesday and added a veiled threat of his own. And I quote, "One cannot prevent an agreement when the negotiators are willing to make more and more concessions to those who, even during the talks, keep chanting, 'Death to America,'" he said, before meeting with Dutch Foreign Minister Bert Koenders. A short path to nuclear weapons. Speaking in Jerusalem, he said, Israel's concern is that the militant Islamic State of Iran is going to receive a short path to nuclear weapons. Many of the restrictions that were supposed to prevent it from getting there will be lifted. And in addition, Iran will get a jackpot, a cash bonanza of hundreds of billions of dollars, which will enable it to continue to pursue its aggression and terror in the region and in the world. Quote unquote. He concluded by saying Israel will continue to have to defend its way of life, freedoms, and security. Israel received an official copy of the Iran nuclear agreement Tuesday, according to the Haaretz website. On Monday, Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Yaalon criticized the potential nuclear agreement. Yaalon told Israeli officials that even if there are some last-minute improvements, the agreement as we understand it is bad, allowing Iran to legitimately become a nuclear threshold state. The bottom line is a bad deal is coming, and after it, we will have to be prepared to defend ourselves on our own, he quoted. On Tuesday, Yalon told the Jerusalem Post that the agreement was built on lies and deceit. We live in a world full of lies and deception, with many false news and fake news, lots of false information, false prophets, false Christs, and messiahs, and a false Christianity, and a world full of evils. And Paul wrote in his second epistle to 2 Timothy, but evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. And Jesus said in Matthew the 24th chapter and verse 4, take heed that no man deceive you. Because of this, Apostle Yeshurun has written a new book titled The Great Counterfeit, a world full of lies and deception. And in the table of contents, you will find the following. The Great Counterfeit, a work of great time in the making. Part 1, The Counterfeit of God and Religion. Chapter 1, The Great Counterfeiter. God creates, Satan counterfeits. Chapter 2, How to use para counterfeit. Christianity's greatest counterfeit. Chapter 3, The Rise of a Counterfeit Christianity, teaching the traditions of man, subversion from within the church. A different gospel gains ground, a gospel of no law, distorted view of God's grace, Satan the devil, master deceiver, why disobedience appeals to human nature, a falling away from truth begins, true Christians forced out of congregations, counterfeit Christianity becomes dominant, a religion transformed through syncretism. True versus counterfeit Christianity. Christianity's great counterfeit and great deception. Part 2. Lies and worldwide deception. Chapter 4. Lying signs and wonders. The supernatural acts of God in the Bible that will literally take place soon. Chapter 5. A world of lies and truth about deception. A tangled web of lies. Chapter 6. Deceptions of the end time. The great last days deception exposing Satan's New World Order agenda. Who really rules the United States behind closed doors? How the Jesuits have controlled the destiny of the USA. The Jesuits build the United States of America. How an American president is chosen. Big media entertainment influence the population. Part 3. The Plain and Simple Truths. Chapter 7. The Plain and Simple Hidden Truths. The plain and simple truth about body art and tattoos. The plain and simple truth about aliens and UFOs. Aliens come from the spirit realm, not from outer space. How can one recognize a false Christ? The Pope of Rome is another false Christ. The 8th king of Revelation 17. Why the papacy of Rome is the Antichrist. How a false Christ can be identified and what their hallmarks are. 7 men around the world who each claim to be Jesus Christ, the final false Messiah. The plain and simple truth about the Catholic Church, the sins of the Church of Rome. The plain and simple hidden truth about Islam, the Jesuits' plot on Jerusalem. The plain and simple hidden truth about Xmas. And the hidden truth concerning the original sin, the origin of the so-called reptilians and the draconians, the bad seed explained. All of this information is in Apostle Yeshua's new book, The Great Counterfeit, a world full of lies and deception. You need to get your copy today. You can get your copy at BarnesandNoble.com, on Blurb.com, on Lulu.com, and on SweetPublishing.com. Again, that is The Great Counterfeit, a world full of lies and deception. You better get your copy today. So let's talk about the lobbying effort. Israel's first course of action looks to be an intense lobbying effort in the U.S. Congress to oppose the deal. Deputy Foreign Minister Zipi Hotovely said Israel will employ all diplomatic means to prevent confirmation of the agreement. Netanyahu's coalition and several partners had angrily criticized Tuesday's agreement. Education Minister Naftali Bennett, who heads the hawkish Jewish Zionist Home Party, said July 14 will be remembered as a dark day for the free world. Cabinet Minister Miri Regeb said the agreement gave Iran a license to kill. Just like James Bond. The cascade of criticism crossed party lines, reflecting the widespread opposition to the deal in Israel. This is a regime based in deceit, evil, and wickedness, and now they're going to do what they did for the last 20 years, which is trying to get themselves nuclear weapons behind the back of the world. Yair Lapid, the head of the opposition Yesh Atid party, told the Associated Press. Now they're going to do it with the help of the international community. Netanyahu called on all sides to put petty politics aside and unite behind opposing Iran. At Tel Aviv's Institute of National Security Studies, Emily Landau, the head of its Arms Control and Regional Security Program, said Tuesday that if there's a sense in the region that the international actors had not provided mechanisms for preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, then definitely there will be additional motivation in the region to go down the nuclear route. Noting that acquiring nuclear weapons capability is irreversible, she added that the sunset provision allowing the agreement to expire after some years would allow Iran eventually to pursue legally a nuclear weapons program. Finally, Landau said the accord does not change the Iranian narrative, which is to expand its status and influence across and beyond the Middle East. So let's talk about Obama's failed presidency. Notice the following article by Eric Seuss on December 31st, 2016. I'm a former lifelong Democrat stating here a clear and incontestable fact. Barack Obama is a failed president. It's true not just because of the sad realities such as that top ex-White House economists admit 94% of all new jobs under Obama were part-time. Or as the economists Alan Kruger and Lawrence Katz wrote in the original of that study, 94% of the net employment growth in the U.S. economy from 2005 to 2015 appears to have occurred in many alternative work arrangements. Alternative work arrangements refer there to Americans who were involuntarily working only part-time jobs. They simply couldn't find full-time, though that's what they wanted. In other words, Obama's failure isn't just apparently because of America's increasingly sales clerk and burger flipping workforce. And Obama's failure is also not just because poverty rose in 96% of U.S. House districts during Obama's presidency. However, that reality turned out to be decisive in Hillary Clinton's loss to Donald Trump on November 8th, as Nate Cohn pointed out in the New York Times on December 23rd, headlining, "How the Obama coalition crumbled, leaving an opening for Trump. Hillary was running on Obama's poor record." Obama's failure is also because of other important reasons. Among them is the uncounted thousands of people who were killed in and the uncounted millions of people who became refugees from the places where Obama or else his installed regimes bound and caused the residents to either die or flee. George W. Bush's destructions of Iraq and even Afghanistan were now being followed by the destructions of Libya by Obama and Sarkozy, and of Syria by Obama and Saud and Tani and Erdogan, who armed the tens of thousands of jihadists and sent them into Syria to overflow and replace Assad. And Bush's destruction were followed also by Obama's keeping in power the barbaric junta regime that replaced the democratically elected Honduran President Manuel Zelaya on 28 June 2009, shortly after Obama entered the White House. And this junta regime in turn caused Honduras' murder rate to soar 50% to become the world's highest, which then caused hundreds of thousands of Hondurans to flee and become undocumented U.S. immigrants against which Donald Trump campaigned. People, you need to remember that the Jesuits is a military regime. So every time that you have seen military regimes taking over Latin America, the Middle East and all that, guess what? Behind them are the Jesuits. Don't kid yourself. Okay? For instance, you know that paramilitary group that is right now in Ukraine and fighting against Russia, the so-called Wagner group, you know, their skull and bones Jesuits. Okay? The Obama regime has thus created far more misery outside America than inside it. Of course, that's what they love to do. They love to create chaos and destruction and every evil thing that you can imagine. Failures such as those didn't cost Hillary Clinton many, if any, votes because most voters didn't even know about these foreign affairs matters. But those failures were actually even bigger than Obama's failures in purely domestic U.S. policy matters, which U.S. voters do know about. Jesuit Trump campaigned against illegal immigrants, but he never even called attention to those peoples fleeing the hells and satanic Jesuit-controlled conditions that the U.S. regime had created in not only Cuba, Nicaragua, Honduras, but earlier in Guatemala and El Salvador. With coups and U.S.-trained death squads, Obama's failure was all his own. It's not because of the good things that Republicans had blocked him from doing. It is instead because of the horrible things, such as his failed TPP, TTIP, and TISA trade treaties, and his successful 2011 killing of Gaddafi and 2014 coup in Ukraine that were central to his actual agenda. A conservative, even reactionary agenda which favored the interests of the hundreds of Masonic billionaires who control all U.S.-based international corporations above the interests of the 300 plus million American people whom the U.S. president is supposed to be serving. I was recruited by the Democratic Party to go door to door encouraging U.S. voters to vote for Barack Obama in 2008. I never expected Barack Obama to turn out and to have been quite possibly even a worse president than Bush. But then again, if I am being very honest, I must confess that at that time I didn't even know about the Jesuit infiltration in the United States. Nobody expected that except Republicans. Obama came into power immediately after an economic crash that was loaded especially with financial institution frauds. He protected the bankers, so financial executive fraud prosecutions didn't soar like they should have. Instead, they plunged. Like Obama told the Wall Street bigs near the start of his regime on 27 March 2009, in private, inside the White House in the Oval Office, "My administration is the only thing between you and the pitchforks. I'm not out there to go after you. I'm protecting you. I'm going to shield you." Yeah, right. And that's what he said. And on 20 September 2016, Dave Johnson of the Campaign for America's Future headline, "Banks use low wages, job insecurity to force employees to commit fraud." So there was no way that the employees could keep their jobs except to do the crimes that they were being virtually forced by their bosses to do. The criminality was actually at the very top where Obama had promised, "I'm protecting you." So the TARP Inspector General urged on 26 October 2016, since the president was refusing to prosecute those people, that Congress remove the insulation around Wall Street CEOs and other high-level officials by requiring the CEO, CFO, and certain other senior executives to sign an annual certification showing that they have conducted due diligence within their organization and can certify that there is no criminal conduct or civil fraud in their organization. The Special Inspector General of TARP, Christy Goldsmith Romero, a Jesuit Catholic, was proposing this as being the way to make prosecutions of these top-level fraud executives so easy that the Obama administration's claims that there was no top-level fraud that could be prosecuted would be an even more blatant, absurdly false lie than it had been. If this country were Ukraine or even Russia, then Americans trained by decades of a CIA-controlled free press would say, "Oh, of course those countries are corrupt, but America isn't like that." But at least under Barack Obama, we were that. This was America, and our president was protecting the elite Masonic fraudsters instead of prosecuting them. So I didn't mention Barack Obama's pushing of the LGBT agenda, which was one of his biggest failures. Releasing criminals and statements about Donald Trump. Barack Obama has released a lot of criminals. Obama brings more prisoners than 9 presidents combined. August 3rd, 2016. President Obama on Wednesday commuted the sentences of another 214 convicted drug felons, mostly dealers, bringing his total to 562 inmates who he has freed under his executive power to end punishments. And of course, because my friends, one of the main industries of the Jesuits is drug trafficking. Yes, and the feds know it. And that's why he did that. Because they are their friends, these convicted drug felons. And the White House says there are many more reprieves to come. Today's 214 grants of communication also represent the most grants in a single day since at least 1900, wrote White House lawyer Neil Eggleston on the White House website. That being said, our work is far from finished. I expect the President will continue to grant clemency in a historic and inspiring fashion. Eggleston boasted that Obama already, with nearly 6 months left in office, has commuted the sentences of more convicts than all the presidents combined dating back to John F. Kennedy, who released about 100. It's not the only way Obama has worked to free convicts, with his Justice Department changing drug sentencing guidelines retroactively in 2014, freeing about 6,100 federal inmates. He also released more in December 2016. Barack Obama has made some very strong statements against Donald Trump, and also that some wonder if Barack Obama will try to remain in office. And yes, he's trying to do that, by the way. He wants to regain his office again. August 3rd, 2016, Barack Obama is a president known for unprecedented statements and behavior. He lived up to that reputation this week when he asserted that GOP presidential nominee Donald Trump is unfit to serve as his successor. It's important to listen to the words he uttered and measure their implications carefully. He said Trump would not abide by norms and rules and common sense. He questioned whether he would observe basic decency should he reach the Oval Office. Well, none of them do. He said he would have been disappointed to lose the elections of 2008 and 2012, but never doubted whether his rivals in those elections, John McCain and Mitt Romney, could function as president or had the knowledge to make government work. That's not the situation here, he added. He added Trump doesn't have the judgment, the temperament, the understanding to occupy the most powerful position in the world. He said he was woefully unprepared to do this job. Obama said Trump lacked knowledge about Europe, the Middle East, and other parts of Asia. It's clear Obama has no use for Donald Trump, but that's not really the point here. Like it or not, and I don't like it, Obama is the coming man of sin and the son of perdition. In other words, the beast power that will be ruling. The question, this harsh, unprecedented attack by a sitting president and a major party nominee to succeed in races should be obvious. What happens if Donald Trump wins the election in November? Given what Obama has said about Trump, would he not have an obligation to prevent Trump from assuming office? And what would that mean to the peaceful process America has enjoyed for more than 2 centuries of transitions of power? Barack Obama has made several brash and critical statements about Donald Trump. Throughout the years, many have wondered if Barack Obama will remain in the presidency when his current term ended, but that did not happen. Sadly, we have seen more and more unconstitutional behavior in the USA under the Barack Obama administration. No scandals, or at least 25 scandals? Barack Obama's administration liked to portray itself as being scandal-free. January 2, 2017, the president prides himself on the fact that his administration hasn't had a scandal. Valerie Jarrett, Obama's close friend and longtime advisor, said during a Sunday interview on TV's popular CNN's Fareed Zakaria, GPS. Notice the following. Squeaky clean, huh? Obama forgot about these 25 scandals. Number 1, Obama's Iran nuke deal. Number 2, Obama knew about Hillary's private email server. Number 3, Obama IRS targets conservatives. Number 4, Obama's DOJ spies on AP reporters. Number 5, Obamacare and Obama's false promises. Number 6, illegal alien amnesty by executive order. Number 7, Benghazi Gate. Number 8, Operation Fast and Furious. Number 9, 5 Taliban leaders of Burgundy. Number 10, Extortion 17. Number 11, recess appointments when Senate was in session. Number 12, appointment of SARS without Senate approval. Number 13, suing Arizona for enforcing federal law. Number 14, refusal to defend Defense of Marriage Act. Number 15, illegally conducting war against Libya. Number 16, NSA spying on Americans. Number 17, Muslim Brotherhood ties. Number 18, Miriam Carey. Number 19, birth certificate. Number 20, executive orders. Number 21, Solyndra and the lost 535 million. Number 22, Egypt. Number 23, cap and trade. When in doubt, bypass Congress. 24, refusal to prosecute new Black Panthers. 25, Obama's U.S. citizen hit list. Of course, the Black Panthers are in with the Jesuits. All of those criminal organizations, by the way, they are in cahoots, teamed up, and they are also collaborating with the Jesuits, okay? Whatever you want to call them, whether it's the Chinese tongues, the triads, the Japanese Yakuza, all of these mafias around the world, they're part of the Jesuits. La Cosa Nostra, the Maras, and all that, they're all with the Jesuits. Trust me. And then there's the international promotion of abortion, support of baby selling, Planned Parenthood, the near doubling of national debt, the disaster in Syria, and the bias towards taking Islamic refugees. Barack Obama's administration was not scandal-free, just like all of the wicked previous and following administrations that have been really headed and directed by the deep state and the shadow government of the Jesuits and of the Freemasons at the top levels of government. The U.S. is actually a very faithful copy of the Vatican in a sense, since its creation and inception into the New World in the 1600s by Catholic Jesuit men like Cardinal O'Connor, who was instrumental in the naming of the states of Virginia, as in Virgin, and Maryland, the land of Mary, and the implementation of the District of Columbia, also known as Washington, D.C. By the way, they have this cult about the goddess Columbia, and this is why they named my homeland, Cuba, is really, what they did is an abbreviation for Colombia, okay? And that's why they named it Cuba. Also Colombia, the country in Latin America, they only took one letter, okay, and they changed it into the U, and they changed it into an O, so it's Colombia instead of Columbia. So you need to understand these things. This is how their mind works, which is also the District of Columbia, also known as Washington, D.C., another replica of the Vatican. Because of this, I feel that as the Bible code shows in the Matrix, I have found that Satan will provide the ways and opportunities for Barack Obama to represent him as a prophesied beast of Revelation and the man of sin and the son of perdition, according to 2 Thessalonians 2:7, which mentions this in these end times. So until next time, this is Apostle Yeshurun saying goodbye, friends. You have heard the messenger of the Lord with Apostle Yeshurun, preparing the way for the return of Jesus Christ. For more information on this podcast and this program, you may write us by email at Yeshurun, Apostle of the Lord, at AOL.com. Again, that is Yeshurun, Yeshurun, Apostle of the Lord, at AOL.com. This podcast was sponsored by the New Radio Church of God and the Plain and Simple Truth Ministries, and by the free will offerings, tithes, and donations of those who are listeners of this podcast and are supporters of this great work of God. The preceding program has been a Plain and Simple Truth Ministries presentation.